Why are you giving my father your car keys? Nia's voice barely carried from the edge of the stage, but it stopped Marcus Reed's hand in midair. A silver Mercedes key fob lay against the oil-darkened lines of his palm, while Allison Whitmore stared at his navy work jacket as though it answered every question. Behind him, Caleb Price pulled the velvet rope across the auditorium entrance. Near the microphone, a woman in a plain black dress noticed the sealed blue envelope slipping from Marcus's pocket. "Dad?" Nia whispered, violin pressed beneath her chin. "That's my dad." 3 hours earlier, Marcus had been standing beneath the fluorescent lights of a grocery store rooftop, listening to an air-conditioning compressor struggle against the July heat. The metal housing vibrated beneath his fingertips. Hot dust, machine oil, and the sharp smell of overheated wiring clung to his jacket as he tightened the final connection and checked the time on his cracked phone. 4:18. A message from Nia waited on the screen. "Don't be late. I play at 7. Marcus wiped his hands on a gray shop towel, leaving one thumb stained at the edge no matter how hard he rubbed. Then he touched the silver wedding ring hanging beneath his shirt on a thin chain. "I'll be there," he said quietly, though no one stood beside him to hear it. In the cab of his aging service van, the blue envelope rested between Nia's recital ticket and his toolbox. Rivorton Conservatory's gold crest shone across the flap. Marcus had sealed the letter twice, pressing the edge flat with the handle of a screwdriver after the old adhesive lifted. He checked it at every red light as though the words inside might somehow escape. By 6:34, he was climbing Rivorton's marble steps in clean dark pants, brown work boots, and the same navy jacket because there had been no time to change. Through the glass doors, chandeliers scattered light across polished floors. Men in tailored suits handed coats to attendants. Women in perfume and silk spoke softly beneath framed photographs of donors. Marcus smelled faintly of copper, soap, and the rooftop he had just left. He showed his ticket at the entrance. The scanner flashed green. Somewhere beyond the auditorium doors, a violin tested one bright note, then another. Marcus knew the second one. Nia always pressed too hard when she was nervous. He smiled before he even saw her. Allison Whitmore stepped away from a group near the donor table and crossed directly toward him. She did not look at his ticket. She did not read the embroidered words "Read Air" and "Heat" above his chest. She simply extended her keys. "Keep it close," she said. "We're leaving right after the scholarships." The key fob struck his palm with a hard plastic click. Marcus looked at it, then at her. Around them, conversations continued as if nothing unusual had happened. "Ma'am, I'm not the valet," he said. "My daughter is playing tonight." Allison's smile tightened without disappearing. "I thought you worked here." Marcus placed the keys back into her open hand. "I do work, ma'am, just not for you." At that moment, the Mercedes alarm chirped through the glass. On stage, Nia turned toward the sound. Her bow slipped half an inch from the string. Marcus raised 2 fingers to his chest, the signal they had practiced at the kitchen table. "Breathe. Hold the rhythm." Nia swallowed and reset her bow. Caleb arrived with the smooth concern of someone correcting a minor inconvenience. "Sir, may I see your ticket?" Marcus handed it over. As Caleb examined it, the blue envelope slid free and landed crest side up on the marble. Caleb bent first. His eyes paused on the name Marcus Reed. The woman in black watched from beside the auditorium door, but said nothing. Caleb returned the ticket, kept the envelope, and pulled the velvet rope across Marcus's path. "There seems to be an issue with the seating list," he said. "You'll need to wait outside while we verify it." Then, without calling the box office or looking at the scanner that had already flashed green, he carried the envelope to the reception desk and pushed it beneath a stack of recital programs. For 1 second, before the paper disappeared, Marcus saw a red word stamped across the corner of his sealed letter. "Hold." The red word "Hold" vanished beneath the recital programs, but Marcus kept staring at the place where the envelope had disappeared. "My ticket scanned green. The list has been updated." "Then please check it again." Caleb's smile remained polished, the kind used in expensive buildings when someone wanted a refusal to sound like assistance. Behind him, warm light spilled through the auditorium doors each time an usher admitted another family, carrying with it the muted scrape of chairs and the dry sweetness of violin rosin. Caleb glanced down at Marcus's brown work boots, then at the faint oil shadow along the cuff of his navy jacket. "This evening has additional security requirements because of our donors," he said. "I'm sure you understand." Marcus looked at the ticket in Caleb's hand. "NIA Reed, family seat." Row A was printed in black beneath Rivorton's gold crest. "I understand what the ticket says." Caleb passed it back without meeting his eyes. "There's a monitor in the service corridor. You'll still be able to hear most of the program." Through the narrow opening between the velvet curtains, Marcus saw the front row. His seat was empty, but Allison Whitmore's cream-colored coat had been spread across it, one sleeve hanging over the armrest like the chair belonged to the fabric more than it belonged to him. Allison leaned toward another parent and murmured something behind her program. Both women glanced toward Marcus, then quickly turned away. He could not hear the words, but he saw the second woman's eyes move from the reed air and heat patch to his hands. Marcus rubbed his thumb against the edge of the ticket. The oil stain would not come off. "Sir, I need you to step away from the entrance. My daughter can see this door. You're creating a distraction." Marcus lowered his voice instead of raising it. "Then let me stand where she can see I didn't leave." The hallway settled into a strange hush around that sentence. Even Caleb paused, though only for a breath. Across the lobby, Evelyn Carter watched from beside a marble column, one hand resting over the ivory fountain pen clipped inside her plain black jacket. She had seen the scanner flash green when Marcus entered. Now she watched Caleb refuse to call the box office, refuse to check the digital record, and speak as though Marcus's presence, not the missing name, was the problem. Still, she did not step forward. A green scan could be cancelled for legitimate reasons, and she had learned long ago that authority used too quickly could bury the truth beneath apologies. Marcus moved 3 feet down the corridor, no farther. He took out his cracked phone and photographed the ticket beneath the electronic wall clock. 6:51 p.m. The paper trembled once between his fingers, then became still. Inside the hall, a piano phrase ended. Applause rose and faded. Marcus glanced toward the curtain, searching for Nia's shadow. At the registration table, a young assistant carried a newly printed seating list to Dr. Leonard Shaw. Shaw wore a charcoal suit and a small silver pin shaped like a treble clef. He ran one finger down the page, stopped at Nia Reed's name, and wrote something in the margin. "Move candidate 14 to the final slot. One judge is leaving before then. The schedule requires balance." The assistant hesitated. Shaw's expression stayed gentle. "We want every student presented in the setting that best supports the program." He sounded like an educator protecting children. He never looked toward Nia waiting behind the curtains. Evelyn saw the assistant erase Nia's original time. She also saw Shaw's eyes flick briefly toward Marcus before he returned the clipboard. Marcus could not hear their conversation, but he noticed the change on the monitor. Nia's name dropped 3 places and reappeared at the bottom of the program. He took another photograph. "Was her time changed?" he asked. Caleb folded his hands in front of him. "Artistic schedules are flexible. She was supposed to play before intermission." "Mr. Reed, these decisions are made by professionals." The word professionals landed softly, but Marcus understood what had been placed beneath it. He looked at the name stitched above his heart, then through the doors toward the empty family seat. "So is my work," he said. "That doesn't make me more important than the people I serve." Caleb's jaw tightened. "No one said it did." "No," Marcus answered. "You just decided which side of the rope I belonged on." He did not push past him. Instead, Marcus positioned himself at the far end of the hall where a thin gap between the curtains gave Nia one clear line of sight. When she glanced out, he raised 2 fingers to his chest again. "Breathe. Hold the rhythm." Nia's shoulders lowered by half an inch. She nodded once, small enough that no one else seemed to notice. Evelyn did. She also noticed something else. Caleb had said Marcus's name was missing from the official list, but the discarded copy beside the printer still showed Marcus Reed, row A in clean black type. The replacement list had been printed 7 minutes after his ticket scanned green. Before Evelyn could reach for it, Shaw stepped close to Caleb and spoke under the applause. Keep Reed away from the committee until the announcement. Marcus had never asked to see the committee. Marcus had never asked to see the committee. He was still looking toward Shaw when a thin metallic rattle traveled down the service corridor behind him, followed by a child's dry, uneven cough. Did you hear that? Marcus asked. The program has already started, Caleb said. Please remain where you were told. The rattle came again. 3 quick strikes, a pause, then the heavy click of a motor trying to restart. Marcus knew that sound. Somewhere behind the painted cinder block wall, a contactor was opening and closing under too much heat. He glanced toward the auditorium curtain. Nia stood in the wings with her violin resting against her shoulder, waiting through another student's applause. She found his eyes and lifted her eyebrows as if asking why he was moving away. Marcus touched 2 fingers to his chest. Breathe. Hold the rhythm. Then he followed the cough. As he passed the reception desk, he saw the corner of his blue envelope beneath the recital programs. The red hold stamp was still visible beside the oily thumbprint he had left on the paper. Marcus slowed, but Caleb was watching him now, and the coughing from the service hall had become sharper. The letter could wait another minute. A child who could not breathe should not have to. Room 4 was crowded with 6 young musicians, 2 folding music stands, an air that felt thick enough to hold. Boy no older than 10 sat on the floor beside an open violin case. One hand pressed to his chest while a teacher searched through his backpack for an inhaler. Sweat darkened the child's collar. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead, and every few seconds the ventilation grill gave a weak shudder without releasing any air. I found it, the teacher said. He needs space. Call the nurse. She's coming. Marcus crouched several feet from the boy, keeping his voice low. Easy breath in. Don't force it. Let the medicine do the work. The boy looked at his stained work jacket, then followed the slow rise and fall of Marcus's hand. Near the doorway stood the woman in black Marcus had seen in the lobby. She held a ring of building keys and watched him without speaking. Marcus moved to the wall panel. A small digital display flashed event priority. Beneath it, a blue arrow showed chilled air being redirected away from the practice wing toward donor reception lounge. He did not touch anything yet. Who authorized the override? He asked. The teacher shook her head. They told us the system was being serviced. It isn't being serviced. Marcus leaned closer. The faint smell of scorched plastic curled from behind the panel. It's being starved. The woman in black stepped forward. Can you fix it? Temporarily. I need access, and I need someone to call the building engineer. She handed him the master key. Marcus did not ask why she had it. He unlocked the panel and photographed the display before changing a single setting. Inside, the relay casing had browned along one edge. The contact points trembled each time the motor tried to engage. Marcus removed the worn screwdriver from his tool pouch, tightened the loose terminal, and reset the dampers to their standard position. Cool air pushed through the ceiling grill with a low rushing sound. The children lifted their faces toward it. The boy on the floor took another measured breath. Then another. Marcus remained beside him until the nurse arrived and confirmed his breathing had begun to settle. Only then did Marcus close the panel without erasing the system log. The woman in black held out several folded bills. For your time. Marcus shook his head. Keep it. You missed part of your daughter's recital. Another father would want someone to stay with his child too. For a moment, her hand remained suspended between them. Marcus looked down at the silver wedding ring beneath his shirt, remembering how Danielle used to say that keeping a promise did not always mean standing in the place you planned. Sometimes it meant becoming the person your child believed you were, even when she could not see you. From the auditorium came a swell of applause. Marcus checked the time and closed his eyes for half a second. Nia's revised performance slot was still ahead, but he had missed the student introduction she had asked him to hear. He opened his eyes and reached for his phone. "Tell the engineer the relay needs replacement tonight," he said. "This hold won't last through another full event." The woman in black studied the photo on his screen. The image showed more than the burned relay. In the upper corner, the control panel recorded the exact time the airflow override had been activated, and the authorization code beneath it. Event Office C. Price. Footsteps approached quickly from the hall. Caleb appeared with 2 security officers, his professional smile gone tight at the edges. "Step away from that panel," he said. Marcus did, placing the screwdriver on the floor where everyone could see it. The woman in black looked from Caleb's badge to the authorization code still glowing on Marcus's phone, and for the first time, she understood that his quiet act of kindness had preserved more than a child's breath. It had preserved the first piece of evidence. The first piece of evidence was still glowing on Marcus's phone when Caleb stepped between him and the woman in black. Unauthorized access to building equipment is a serious matter. The boy couldn't breathe. "That does not give you permission to alter our systems." One security officer glanced at the open panel, then at Marcus's screwdriver lying on the tile. The other rested a hand near his radio without touching it. Cool air moved through the room now, carrying the clean medicinal smell of the child's inhaler and the faint odor of burned plastic from the damaged relay. On the surface, Caleb's version was simple. An angry parent had been denied entry, wandered into a restricted area, and opened equipment he did not own. Marcus understood why the officers were cautious. He also understood that raising his voice would make Caleb's story easier to believe. "Call your building engineer," Marcus said. Caleb folded his arms. "We will handle this internally." "Then ask him one question." Marcus tilted his phone toward the ceiling light until the photograph sharpened. "Why was the air redirected at 5:56? Almost an hour before I arrived?" The room slowed. The authorization code beneath the timestamp read Event Office C. Price. Caleb looked at the screen for less than a second. "That code is used for event management. It doesn't prove who entered the command." The explanation was reasonable enough to keep the officers from moving, but his next sentence came too quickly. "And the donor lounge required temperature protection for the instruments on display." No one had mentioned instruments in the donor lounge. The woman in black's fingers tightened around her ivory pen. "What instruments?" she asked. Caleb turned toward her, irritation briefly breaking through his professional expression. "The auction pieces. They're sensitive to heat. There are no instruments in that room tonight." He blinked once. Then his smile returned. "I may be thinking of next month's gala." Marcus said nothing. He closed the panel, leaving the damaged relay visible through the inspection window, and picked up his screwdriver only after one officer nodded permission. "I'm willing to wait for the engineer," he said. "But my daughter is still inside." Caleb lowered his voice as though offering kindness. "If you cooperate, we may be able to avoid making this more embarrassing for her." Marcus's jaw moved once. "She didn't do anything. No one said she did." "Then don't use her to make me quiet." The woman in black looked at him again. Not with trust yet, but with the attention people gave a sound that did not belong in an otherwise familiar room. She had watched him photograph the panel before touching it, preserve the log, and ask for independent verification. Those were not the choices of someone trying to hide reckless behavior. Still, the open equipment, the restricted corridor, and Caleb's authority badge remained facts she could not simply ignore. "Stay here," she said. "I want to see the intake record for the repair request." Caleb's eyes narrowed. "That information isn't available to guests." "Then bring it to someone who is authorized." She turned before he could ask who she meant. Marcus watched her leave through the service corridor, then glanced toward the auditorium. Applause rose again, muffled by 2 heavy doors. Nia's name remained at the bottom of the monitor. His blue envelope was no longer visible beneath the programs. "Where is my letter?" he asked. Caleb checked his watch. "Your appeal is being reviewed." Marcus looked at him. "What appeal?" "The scholarship letter." "I never called it a scholarship letter." Caleb's face stayed still, but one of the security officers shifted his gaze toward the reception desk. Marcus continued quietly. And I never said it was an appeal. Caleb exhaled through his nose. Mr. Reed, I'm trying to help you. Then help me understand how you know what's inside a sealed envelope. For the first time, Caleb had no polished answer ready. At the reception desk, the woman in black had found the envelope half hidden inside a drawer. Under the brighter task lamp, the blue paper showed more than the red hold stamp and Marcus's oil-dark thumbprint. The flap had been lifted and resealed. A thin crescent of dried adhesive shone along the edge, and beneath it, written so lightly it nearly disappeared into the paper, were two slanted initials. Alice Evelyn did not open the envelope. She photographed the seal, placed the letter inside a clear evidence sleeve, and checked the intake number against the registration terminal. The screen said document not received. The physical timestamp printed on the envelope said 6:37 p.m. Behind her, Caleb entered the lobby and stopped when he saw the sleeve in her hand. Dr. Shaw already reviewed the father's request, he said. Evelyn looked up slowly. She had not told him the envelope belonged to Marcus, and Shaw had just claimed the letter had never arrived. Evelyn had not told Caleb the envelope belonged to Marcus, and Dr. Shaw had already claimed the letter never arrived. Who opened it? Marcus asked. No one opened anything, Caleb said. Then why was it resealed? The question landed softly, but the service corridor seemed to contract around it. Cool air moved through the ceiling vents with a steady mechanical breath, carrying the scorched plastic smell from the relay Marcus had stabilized. One security officer looked at the clear evidence sleeve in Evelyn's hand. The other lowered his radio by an inch. Caleb recovered first. Mr. Reed, this confusion is exactly why documents must go through proper channels. Right now, our concern is your unauthorized access to restricted equipment. He turned toward the officers with professional regret. Please escort him outside while we complete an incident report. Marcus did not resist when an officer asked him to set down his tool pouch. He placed it carefully against the wall, closed the zipper, and moved his cracked phone to the floor beside it with the photograph still visible on the screen. Don't delete that image, Evelyn said. Caleb's eyes shifted toward her. This is an internal facilities matter. Then an internal facilities record should settle it. Her tone was calm, but something in it made the younger officer stop reaching for Marcus's phone. From the auditorium came a burst of applause, followed by the soft squeal of a chair dragging across the floor. Marcus looked toward the closed doors. Nia was still waiting. Every minute he spent under suspicion was another minute she might believe he had chosen anger over her recital. Call the building engineer, Marcus said. We don't need a public scene, Caleb replied. Neither do the children in that room. You've made your point. No, Marcus said. The relay will make it for me. The engineer arrived 4 minutes later carrying a red diagnostic case and wearing a Rivorton Facilities badge. His name was Luis Mendoza. He listened to Caleb's summary without interrupting, then crouched before the open inspection window. The hallway felt quiet enough for everyone to hear the faint ticking inside the relay. Luis touched the casing with the back of 2 fingers and pulled away. Kill power to this section. Caleb's polished expression tightened. Is that necessary? Unless you want the contactor to weld shut. Luis opened the panel, checked the terminal Marcus had secured, and studied the control log. Who made this temporary hold? Marcus raised one hand. I did. Luis traced the wire with a flashlight. You didn't cause the failure. A chair stopped scraping inside the hall. Even the security officer nearest Marcus turned fully toward the panel. Luis pointed to the browned plastic. This terminal had been loose for hours. He restored standard airflow and kept the motor from cycling itself to death. Another 15 or 20 minutes, you could have lost ventilation to the practice wing and the main hall. Caleb folded his hands. So his actions happened to help. Luis looked at him. No. His actions prevented a shutdown. Evelyn slowly placed the evidence sleeve on the reception counter. The whispering near the donor lounge faded as staff began to understand what had just been confirmed. The man they were preparing to remove had protected a room full of children and possibly the entire recital. Marcus did not smile. He picked up his phone only after Luis finished photographing the relay and asked him to send the report directly to facilities, not through the event office. And note the override, Marcus said. The children's air was redirected before I arrived. Caleb stepped closer, lowering his voice. We can resolve this privately. I can arrange a seat near the front and make sure the committee understands your assistance tonight. Marcus looked through the auditorium doors toward row A, where Allison's cream coat still occupied his family seat. My work on that system has nothing to do with my daughter's score. No one is suggesting that. You just did. He lifted his tool pouch from the floor. Don't put my repair in her file. Don't call it a donation. Don't use it to make this easier for anyone. Evelyn watched his face as he said it. There was no performance in him, no attempt to turn humiliation into leverage. He was actively refusing the very advantage Shaw had already accused him of seeking. Evelyn took out her ivory pen and wrote 2 instructions on the back of a blank program. Preserve the hallway camera from 5:30 onward. Lock the maintenance log against edits. She handed the note to a young administrator, who read it and left immediately without asking who had authorized the request. Marcus noticed that. So did Caleb. Shaw appeared at the end of the corridor, his treble clef pin catching the fluorescent light. I understand Mr. Reed's contribution has created some confusion, he said. But we cannot allow a parent to use charitable giving to influence an artistic decision. Marcus's hand stopped on the zipper of his tool bag. Evelyn looked up from the sealed blue envelope. What charitable giving? Shaw's mouth remained composed, but the pause before his answer was too long. I was speaking generally. You called his unopened letter an appeal, Evelyn said. Now you're calling it a contribution. Shaw glanced toward Caleb. Perhaps staff summarized it incorrectly. Marcus did not step toward him. He only asked, How much did they tell you I gave? No one answered. Evelyn turned to the registration terminal and entered the reference code printed beneath the envelope's intake stamp. A financial archive opened on the screen. At first, there was only one small transfer associated with Reed Air and Heat. Then another appeared beneath it. Then 5 more. 7 tuition balances paid on 7 different nights. Each one transferred within hours of a late service invoice. Each one marked anonymous. 7 anonymous tuition payments sat on the screen beneath the name Reed Air and Heat. Each one made within hours of a late night service invoice. Evelyn clicked the first transfer.
$86.
The second was $112. None was large enough to earn a plaque, a gala invitation, or even a handwritten thank you, but each had stopped a student account from being frozen. Those are private, Marcus said. They were supposed to stay that way. 7 families received help, Evelyn replied. Why attach the records to your letter? Marcus looked through the glass. Doors toward the auditorium. Nia's name still waited at the bottom of the program monitor. Because the fund credited 2 of those payments to a donor campaign I never joined. I asked them to correct the records without putting my name on anything. Evelyn opened the scanned intake summary. The transaction sheet had been separated from the blue envelope and stored under a restricted committee code. The letter itself was listed as missing. She reached for the ivory pen inside her jacket and signed a preservation request with a short, precise stroke. The young administrator beside her saw the signature and straightened. Dean Carter, she whispered. Do you want finance locked immediately? Marcus turned toward Evelyn. Caleb did too. For the first time, the plain black dress, the master keys, and the quiet authority in her voice formed a complete picture. Evelyn did not explain herself. Lock the records, she said. No edits, no deletions, no replacement. A printer behind the desk began feeding out the 7 payment confirmations. The pages slid into the tray one by one, each carrying the same 4 account digits and a different child's identification number. Marcus did not reach for them. He looked almost pained that the names might be exposed. Those children didn't ask to become evidence, he said. Redact them. Evelyn's hand stopped above the first page. Then she nodded. You're right. She ordered the student names covered before the documents went any farther. Shaw stepped closer, his voice low and controlled. Dean Carter, this is becoming disproportionate. Parent made several charitable payments. That does not entitle him to disrupt a scholarship process. Marcus looked at him. I never asked it to. Then perhaps we should discuss this privately after the recital. My daughter's score is being announced tonight. Shaw wiped one finger beneath his collar, though the corridor had grown cool. Candidate 14's score was reviewed according to committee standards. Evelyn turned to the registrar. Bring me the original judge sheets. The papers arrived in a gray folder with 3 signatures across the bottom. Nia's handwritten scores placed her near the top in tone, control, and interpretation. On the electronic record, 2 categories were lower. Professional readiness had dropped by 6 points. Institutional representation had dropped by 8. Marcus read the second phrase twice. What does that measure? No one answered immediately. It isn't on the published rubric, Evelyn said. Shaw closed the folder. Committees require discretion. Not every consideration can be reduced to a public checklist. Then why was it added after the judges signed? The printer stopped. The sudden silence made the ventilation hum sound louder than before. Evelyn opened the audit history. At 6:51, Shaw had accessed Marcus's financial profile. At 6:53, Nia's score had changed. At 6:56, her performance slot had been moved. A linked email appeared beneath the log. Delay read pending donor review. Family profile may not fit institutional expectations. Caleb looked toward the ceiling camera. Shaw reached for the mouse. This system contains confidential information. Evelyn placed her hand over the folder before he could close the screen. Then it should not have been used to judge a child's music. Marcus could have read the email aloud. He could have demanded that the auditorium doors be opened and Shaw exposed immediately. Instead, he looked at the 7 redacted payment pages lying between them. If this goes public, he said, keep those children out of it, and don't give Nia anything because of me. Evelyn studied him for a long moment. She had seen enough evidence to believe he had been wronged, but belief was not yet proof of who had altered the score. The administrator account belonged to Shaw, though 2 committee employees shared the office terminal. Evelyn called the conservatory's independent auditor and requested the backup access log, then ordered the recital's livestream archive preserved before anyone could overwrite it. Shaw's phone vibrated. He silenced it without looking at the screen. The scholarship announcement cannot be delayed because of a technical discrepancy. It is no longer a technical discrepancy, Evelyn said. It is a pattern. She turned the monitor so Marcus could see the full timeline. His letter received, his seat removed, Nia's slot changed, her score reduced, all within 19 minutes of Shaw opening the family profile. Beyond the doors, applause rose for the student before Nia. Evelyn gathered the original score sheets, the redacted payments, the blue envelope, and the audit printout into one clear case. Then the live stream technician called back. The recording system had captured not only the score changes, but the screen and the person seated in front of it. Shaw was already walking toward the stage with the scholarship envelope in his hand when Evelyn said, "This can no longer be handled behind a closed door." Shaw was already crossing the grand recital hall with the scholarship envelope held against his charcoal suit when Evelyn entered through the side aisle carrying the clear evidence case. The house lights had risen only halfway, leaving the audience in a soft amber haze while the stage remained bright around Nia and the student orchestra. Chairs creaked. Programs folded. A judge near the aisle slipped one arm into his coat, ready to leave. Marcus came in behind Evelyn without his tool bag, his work jacket still marked by a dark line of machine oil at the cuff. He did not look like a man arriving to win. He looked tired, worried, and determined not to disappear. "Ladies and gentlemen," Shaw began, resting both hands on the podium. "Before we announce tonight's scholarship, I need to address an unfortunate disruption involving a parent who entered a restricted area and attempted to influence the process." A ripple moved through the room. Allison lowered her eyes toward the Mercedes keys in her lap. Caleb stood beside the auditorium doors, posture straight, event badge centered neatly over his tie. Shaw's voice remained gentle. "We have procedures for a reason. They protect our students from confusion, outside pressure, and misunderstandings. For a moment, his explanation seemed to settle over the audience. Marcus had opened a control panel. Marcus had brought financial records. Marcus's daughter was competing for money. On the surface, Shaw had arranged the facts into a shape that looked almost reasonable. Evelyn did not interrupt. She placed the clear case on the closed lid of the grand piano and waited until Shaw finished. Then she stepped to the second microphone. The scholarship announcement will be delayed. Shaw turned toward her. Dean Carter, with respect, the committee has completed its review. The title moved through the audience in whispers. Marcus looked at Evelyn, finally understanding why staff had obeyed her without question. Evelyn faced the judges. Before any name is announced, 3 recorded performances will be rescored under candidate numbers only. No names, no family information, no donor records. Shaw's smile tightened. That is not standard procedure. Neither is changing a signed score after opening a parent's financial profile. The room became still. Nia stood beside her music stand, violin lowered against her dress. She looked toward Marcus. He raised 2 fingers to his chest. Breathe. Hold the rhythm. She did not speak. She simply moved closer to the trusted orchestra instructor beside her and wrapped both hands around the neck of her violin. The technician played 3 short recordings. Candidate 8, Candidate 11, Candidate 14. The judges entered their scores on clean paper cards while the audience watched. Candidate 14 placed first. Shaw leaned toward the microphone. A second evaluation conducted under public pressure cannot replace the committee's full assessment. Performance is only one factor. Professional readiness and institutional representation also matter. It was the first retention turn. The explanation gave him room again. Parents nodded. A conservatory did consider more than one night's music. Shaw lifted the scholarship envelope as though the matter had been restored to order. Marcus stepped no closer than the edge of the stage. Was her music different before you read my job? He asked. The question was quiet enough that Shaw had to lean toward him. This is not about your occupation. Evelyn opened the evidence case. First, she placed Marcus's row A family ticket beneath the document camera. The screen showed the green scan at 6:42 p.m. Then she displayed the reprinted seating list from 6:49, where his name had been replaced by donor hold. Allison's cream coat still lay across the empty seat in the front row. That was an event management adjustment, Caleb said from the doors. A security precaution. Evelyn nodded once, as if granting the explanation its full weight. Then she showed the original list with Marcus's name intact. What security event occurred during those 7 minutes? Caleb's mouth opened, but no answer came. Evelyn placed the original judge sheets beside the electronic score. 3 signatures. Higher marks. No category labeled institutional representation. Shaw reached for the microphone. One judge's entry required correction. The second retention spike came when Evelyn turned toward the projection booth. Then the recording should confirm that. The livestream technician brought the archived screen capture onto the large display. At 6:51, Shaw's administrator account opened Marcus Reed's family profile. At 6:53, Nia's score dropped. At 6:56, her performance moved to the last position. Shaw's reflection appeared faintly in the black edge of the monitor, seated at the terminal. No one spoke. Marcus looked at the 7 redacted tuition records inside the case, then at Nia. Don't show the children's names, he said. They didn't choose this. Evelyn covered the identification numbers before placing the records on the piano. Even now, Marcus was protecting people who could not protect him. Shaw's hand tightened around the unopened scholarship envelope. This material is confidential. Continuing publicly could damage innocent families. Marcus met his eyes. Then don't bury the truth under them. Evelyn lifted the sealed blue envelope from the evidence case. The red hold stamp faced the audience. Marcus's oil-dark thumbprint marked one corner, and the pale initials LS remained visible beside the unevenly resealed flap. Nia Reed's music has now been judged without her father's name, Evelyn said. What remains is to determine why this letter was hidden and what Marcus Reed actually asked this institution to do. She carried the envelope to the center microphone, placed one finger beneath the loosened seal, and the entire hall waited for the paper to open. Evelyn slipped one finger beneath the loosened seal, and the blue envelope opened with a soft tearing sound that carried farther than it should have. No one shifted in a chair. No program rustled. Even the projector fan seemed suddenly loud above the stage. Evelyn removed a single folded letter and held it beneath the light. "Please do not favor my daughter because of anything I have given," she read. "Let her music earn what my name never should." Shaw's scholarship envelope lowered by an inch. Caleb looked toward the auditorium doors as though measuring the distance to them. Allison's fingers closed around her Mercedes keys until the metal teeth pressed white marks into her palm. Evelyn continued. Marcus had written that several anonymous tuition payments had been incorrectly credited to a donor campaign. He wanted the records corrected so no family received influence it had not earned, but he did not want his own name placed on a wall, printed in a program, or connected to Nia's application. Attached to the letter were 7 transaction references.
$86.
112. 94. Small balances paid after late-night repair calls. Each one arriving before a student account would have been suspended. Evelyn placed the redacted payment pages beneath the document camera. The dates appeared beside 7 Reed Air and Heat invoices. Every transfer had been made within 24 hours of Marcus finishing another overnight job. These payments kept 7 students enrolled, Evelyn said. Her voice did not rise. It did not need to. Several of those students performed in this hall tonight. A mother in the 3rd row covered her mouth. A father near the aisle stared down at his program, as if remembering an unexplained notice that had once disappeared from his child's account. Marcus remained at the edge of the stage, shoulders level, hands open at his sides. He did not look toward the donor wall. He looked only at Nia. Evelyn turned to the screen behind her. The timeline appeared in clean white numbers. Marcus's letter had been received at 6:37. His family ticket had scanned green at 6:42. Shaw had opened the Reed financial profile at 6:51. Nia's scores changed at 6:53. Her performance moved to the final slot at 6:56. The live stream recording resumed. Shaw's reflection sat before the terminal as the numbers dropped beneath his hand. His explanation had nowhere left to go. "Those were discretionary adjustments," he said, but his voice had gone dry. "The committee is permitted to consider institutional representation." Evelyn placed the published scoring rubric beside the original judge sheets. "That category does not exist." Shaw reached for his pen. It slipped from his fingers, struck the wooden podium, and rolled until it stopped beside the sealed scholarship envelope. Evelyn faced the audience. Candidate 14 was rescored tonight without a name, family profile, occupation, or donor history. Candidate 14 placed first. She turned toward Nia. "Candidate 14 is Nia Reed." The room did not erupt. It went still first. The silence seemed to begin at the stage and move outward through every row, touching the empty family seat beneath Allison's cream coat, the velvet rope at the entrance, and the blue envelope now lying open beneath the microphone. Evelyn looked toward Shaw. "Effective immediately, you are suspended from all scholarship decisions and all access to student records pending an independent investigation. Tonight's original result is void. Every affected file will be preserved and reviewed." She instructed security not to remove him publicly, but to collect his badge and computer access under board procedure. Then she ordered Caleb's guest list permissions frozen and the event logs secured. Justice arrived without shouting, but its movement was unmistakable. Doors closed. Access ended. Records were protected. The false result disappeared from the screen. Nia Reed will receive the scholarship based on the blind evaluation completed in this room, Evelyn said. Not because of her father's payments. Not because of what happened tonight. Because her music earned it. Only then did applause begin, uncertain at first, then rising through the hall. Marcus did not raise his hands or turn toward the people now standing for him. He crossed the stage and stopped in front of Nia. Her Violin rested against her chest, and her eyes shone beneath the stage lights. "You okay?" he asked. She nodded, then glanced toward the audience. "I missed the ending." Marcus crouched until they were eye to eye. "Do you want to play the last 8 bars again? For the judges? For yourself?" Nia took one slow breath. Marcus raised 2 fingers to his chest. She returned to her mark while the room settled again. The first note emerged thin with emotion, then steadied. 8 measures moved through the hall without a cough, a whisper, or a chair scraping the floor. When her bow lifted from the final string, no one clapped immediately. Marcus stood exactly where she could see him. Evelyn looked across the silent room and said, "The man some of you mistook for a valet has carried more children through these doors than many names on our donor wall." Allison lowered her keys into her purse without looking up. Caleb removed his event badge and placed it on the control table. Shaw stared at the open letter as if the quiet words inside it had become heavier than anything he could answer. The truth had restored Nia's score and Marcus's place beside his daughter, but recognition brought a different kind of responsibility. Now that the room could finally see him, what would Marcus ask it to change? The applause faded slowly, leaving behind the soft scrape of programs being folded and the low murmur of families gathering coats. No one crowded Marcus for photographs. No one asked Nia to explain what the adults had done to her. Evelyn made certain of that. She stood at the foot of the stage, blocked 2 local reporters from approaching, and said, "She is 12 years old. Tonight, she goes home with her father." Marcus slipped Nia's violin into its worn case and tested the metal latch he had repaired earlier. Closed with a clean click. Across the hall, Shaw surrendered his conservatory badge to a board representative and was escorted to a private office, not through the audience. His accounts were frozen, the scholarship files were secured, and the investigation moved forward through records rather than humiliation. Caleb placed the altered seating lists, event emails, and access logs into a sealed evidence box. Allison removed her cream coat from Marcus's front row chair and folded it over her arm. "Mr. Reed," she began, the Mercedes keys hidden inside her fist, "I owe you an apology." Marcus looked toward Nia before answering. "You owe the next person a different choice." 3 weeks later, the Independent Review confirmed that Shaw had changed more than one student file after reading family income, occupation, or donor connections. He was removed from the scholarship committee and barred from accessing student records while the board completed its investigation. Every affected performance was res-scored by evaluators who saw only candidate numbers. No child's name was released, and no family was asked to tell its hardship publicly to prove it deserved fairness. Caleb was suspended for altering the guest list and authorizing the donor lounge override. He turned over the messages that had instructed him to keep Marcus away from the committee. Evelyn told him that cooperation mattered, but it did not erase responsibility. Any return to Rivorton would require training, independent review, and proof that he could enforce rules without deciding whose dignity mattered first. Allison stepped down from the Parent Event Council for 1 year. Her written apology did not ask Marcus to forgive her. It described what she had done, why it was wrong, and how she would be held accountable if it happened again. Nia's scholarship was formally awarded under Candidate 14, based entirely on the blind score. The conservatory removed parent occupation, income, race, and donor history from the artistic review process. Score changes now required 2 electronic signatures. Every submitted letter received a tracking code that could not be deleted. The blue envelope, still marked by Marcus's oily thumbprint and the red hold stamp, was preserved in the reform file as evidence, not displayed behind glass as an inspirational story. Evelyn met Marcus in an empty practice room after the board vote. Afternoon light rested across the piano keys, and his old tool pouch sat beside his chair. "We would like to name this room after you," she said. Marcus shook his head. "A name on a door would not have kept me outside that night." He placed the original family ticket on the piano between them. The paper was creased and soft at the edges, but the words NIA Reed, family seat, were still readable. "Make sure this means the same thing no matter what a parent is wearing." Evelyn nodded. She did not offer him a ceremonial title or a check. She offered him a rotating seat on the conservatory's Parent Access Council, with authority to review admissions procedures and event policies. Marcus accepted on one condition. No parent's job should be visible before a child's work is judged. The Quiet Hands Fellowship began that fall, supporting children whose parents worked night shifts, service jobs, repair calls, hospital floors, loading docks, buses, and kitchens. Applications were private. Families were not photographed receiving help. Marcus continued repairing air conditioners, sometimes answering emergency calls before dawn. His navy jacket still smelled faintly of metal and clean machine oil. It no longer looked to Nia like the reason people had overlooked him. It looked like the thing he wore while keeping promises. At the next recital, Marcus entered through the same marble lobby carrying his tool pouch because he had come directly from work. No one handed him keys. At row A, the chair once covered by Allison's coat held a plain white card. NIA read, Family. Marcus sat down and placed the creased ticket inside his jacket, over the wedding ring hanging from its chain. On stage, Nia lifted her violin. Before the first note, she found her father beneath the lights. Marcus raised 2 fingers to his chest. Breathe. Hold the rhythm. Nia breathed in. The room became quiet, not because anyone had been exposed, but because everyone finally understood what that small gesture had carried through the doors. After the final note, Nia looked down at him and whispered, "Did they finally see you, Dad?" Marcus smiled. "You did. That was enough to keep me standing." And beneath the soft glow of the recital hall, the old work jacket, the repaired violin case, and the worn family ticket no longer looked like evidence of a life the room had. Once dismissed, they looked like proof that dignity never needed to shout, and kindness was never lost. It had only been waiting for truth to give it a voice.